Assalamu alaikum. It's your brother Haq Islam, and I have with me today a brother that needs no introduction. He is someone I've admired for years for the stances he's taken as a Muslim. My brother, our brother, Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam. Thanks for having me.
Brother, thank you for coming. I am so excited that you're here because I've watched your career in ball because in my mind, the New York Knicks drafted me out of high school.
Yeah,
In my mind,
I get it.
in my mind. But you were someone that me and my friends out of New York watched when you were at LSU,
Mhm.
and then when you went to Denver Nuggets, you was just torching them. You were torching them, and this was before 3 pointers was like a thing it is today. Because now there'll be a 3-on-1 break, and the brother will stop 27 feet out and
Yeah,
take
I
a
know,
shot,
right?
which makes no sense, but you know what I'm saying. Now, brother, Allah puts no burden on a man he can't handle. The circumstances of your birth were adverse.
Mhm.
Let's talk about that because that's the beginning of what made you the man you are today. Let's talk about growing up in Gulfport, Mississippi. That sounds oppressive. Gulfport, Mississippi.
And it is. I
Yeah,
mean, Mississippi has that reputation,
right.
and it hasn't left it. Uh, I even hate to say this in a way. I mean, it's just a story in particular of so many of us, black people in this country, especially the ones that have been fortunate enough to make it to the NBA or sports. A lot of us come from those tough, humble beginnings, and so in that case, I was no different. Growing up in one of the most racist areas uh, in this country, uh, with a mother who I didn't have a father growing up. None of us did actually. I had two brothers, and she had to work hard, and so a lot of
You were the
times
youngest.
I was the middle child.
You're the middle child.
Yeah, so oftentimes we left pretty much. I mean, we had family around, but we're pretty much left on our own. And those stories of having to scrounge for food and sugar water and all of those things, man, it was tough. It was tough. And the fact that she had an eighth grade education too, you kind of grow up because we didn't grow up in an environment where there were books around the house, so we had philosophical conversations. And so, because there's only so much a parent can give you, they can't give you what they don't have.
Yeah, exactly.
And if you grow up with this inferiority complex especially when it comes to issues pertaining to academics. You don't see a future for yourself, and I was one of those children. I couldn't. And then you're taught as a child, right? Sky's the limit. You can be whatever you want to be, and the people that usually are the ones that have the money and have the fame that you're watching on television are the actors, the entertainers, and so this is often sometimes what you strive to be. You see, well, I might have a better, especially for me as a young boy. I knew that I had athletic abilities. I just knew that from the door. I could catch on to sports real quick. So I decided that this is the route that I have to take to try to gain that hyper success that you see on TV.
When did you first pick up a basketball?
I don't know the first time, but when I became serious about it was fourth grade. Uh, I used to play a lot of different sports. And this particular day, I was on the playground at a place called Central Elementary, and I was playing against my brother. He had a friend named David Warren. And there was another guy out there, and this lady drove up. Her name is Miss Asaleta, but we call her Miss Cookie. She kind of gives you the impression of Medea. And she drove up. I didn't even know because the parking lot was empty, and she told me to come here, and I came. And she said, "Go in there and try out." I said, "I said, I said, Miss Cookie, you have to ask my mom first." She said, "Don't worry about that. You go try it. I'll talk to your mama later." She saw something. And I just remember going in, and the coach had to tell me I have to learn how to pass.
This was junior high.
No, this was fourth grade.
This is fourth grade.
Yeah. And I went in, made the team. My first game, I ended up scoring 21 points. And when you notice how the crowd was cheering, and I never had that type of attention before. was like, well, I like this. I want to do this all the time. So that's when I took it serious.
You were an outstanding athlete at Gulfport High School. Um, what kind of, and again, I want to focus on like the circumstances that led to reversion. What kind of tension, if at all, you were receiving for being the star athlete at Gulfport High School?
Well, I didn't really, at Gulfport High, I didn't really have a lot of attention because let's just face it, when you're the star, uh, a lot of things, they cater to you.
Mm-hmm.
However, at the same time, I wasn't raised to be arrogant. I was always raised to carry yourself in a certain way. So I wasn't that guy that really caused problems anyway. So I didn't have really any friction in high school, other than I just didn't like school. There wasn't a place for me. It was just a transition. I was in school because I had to be to get to somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, so I didn't. I mean, now there was an incident that took place in high school when I had to. That was, I think, my first time I had to confront an authority figure that was well known, which was my high school coach, because I was receiving letters from different. I didn't even know because they were sending the letters to the school, and they weren't sending them to my home. And I was invited. I missed this prestigious camp somewhere in, I think, Carolina at the time. I think it was a JBC, JCB camp on the level of a Nike camp. And then the Nike camp letter came through. And it's kind of going through the information without going detail. There was this doctor that I befriended named Dr. Dunn that wanted to just make sure that I was taken care of, because at Gulfport I had a history of, they said before I got there, hiding letters, right? Because they wanted certain athletes to go where they wanted them to go.
So the population in your school was black,
It was mixed,
mixed.
but it's a good one. It was pretty mixed. It was probably a little bit more African American than whites, if that.
Mm-hmm.
It was pretty
So
bad.
this is poor whites.
You can say that.
Mhm. What can you say? What do you
No,
think?
no, no, no. It's
The reason why I'm saying that is because it's like it. Listen, as you know, my history is in music,
yeah.
and whenever the groups would go on tour, I wasn't going to Mississippi. It's just this
A lot
this
of people say that even to
this
this
thing
day.
in my mind about Mississippi. So I'm thinking like there's tension in the high school. There's poor whites who are jealous of you. The administrators, like I see this in my mind, and my mind is
Yeah,
thinking overtime. Like the administrators don't give you your letters.
yeah,
They want you to go to Mississippi State, some Mississippi University, so you're not getting nothing.
yeah,
You know what I'm
yeah.
saying? So is that the case? Well, let's focus on these letters. The letters are not coming to you. They're not coming. They're going to the school.
Yes, they're going to the school, and I want to go back on the poor thing too. But anyway, yeah, they were going to the school, and Dr. Dunn got into the picture. Um, he was a guy that he would make sure that in the morning, a lady named Miss January also that I was very close to, she would bring me $10, made sure I got the newspaper, and Dr. Dunn said, "I don't want you reading sports. I want you to read what's happening in the
Mm.
world." Right? And I had, that was something I had to do. And so someone got in touch with him that, hey, man, we're not receiving an answer from Mahmoud about coming to this Nike camp. Come to find out, they got the letter and they didn't show it to me. And at that time, I was more passive than I am now, right? Because you're taught growing up just to play the game, things
Yeah,
of this
but
nature.
that's wicked, brother.
No,
That's wicked.
no, it is.
That's wicked.
It's very wicked. And another side came out of me because now I'm looking at it like, man, you messing with my future. I mean, I wake up 4 o'clock in the morning. I'm fighting all the elements. I mean, this is, for me, this is life and death. For a lot of us,
To
especially
get
young
out.
black men, this is life or death, man.
That's right.
And so I wasn't even looking at authority anymore. And so I remember going into his office, and I sat down. Look, diplomacy was out the. I'm just, look. I'm gonna shoot it to you straight with no chaser, right? And I told him, look, man, I was told that I got a letter that I didn't receive from you guys, and you have no right to hold that letter. And I said, I'm not in here to ask you your permission. I'm letting you know that I'm going to that camp. And he had the nerve to tell me that, well, look, you can get more notoriety in the state of Mississippi than going to that camp. I said, that's ridiculous. I said, you're going, 110 of the top players in the nation, coaches from all over the country are going to be there, all over the
What are
country.
you, 14, 15?
I'm like 10th going into 11. I don't
Yeah, 14, 15.
Yeah, something like that. And so we fell out for a minute, and it took me some time to warm up to him again. But it was one of the best decisions that I made. But also, what a lot of people don't know is even before going, state of Mississippi had a rule that even though they were inviting me, they were going to pay for it. The state of Mississippi had a rule that I had to pay for it. They couldn't pay for it for me. My mom didn't have that money.
So that was to
Or I
keep
would be
you
ineligible.
Yeah.
For high school.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody wants to pay for me to come to a basketball camp, but they can benefit off me now. You know? And
That's
so,
wicked because they didn't want you to leave the state.
Exactly. And so Dr. Dunn paid that. He put the money into my mother's account so I can fly to Nike, at Princeton University in New Jersey. That's where they had it. And also they said that you can't bring back any paraphernalia. Oh, it was look. I had a lot of. I mean, I had a chip on my shoulder with that. I vowed. I said I would never go to Mississippi school.
Just because, so you couldn't bring back a pair of sneakers.
No, that they gave me.
You see, brother, all those ideas I had in my mind about Mississippi, it's all true. You know what I'm saying? Drew Hill going to Miss. I say I ain't going. I'm not going. You know that's tension, and the thing is that we think is normal, but that's crazy.
That's right. That's right.
You know, so you couldn't wait to get out of Mississippi.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I even had to, because I'm still in school, and so Dr. Dunn and Miss January, and they said, listen, but you have to be smart, right? These people could make it tough for you. So when you have schools that you're considering going to, throw a Mississippi school in there, even though you know you're not going, right? And so that's why I don't even know the one I threw in. I think I said I'm considering Mississippi State. Never was considered Mississippi.
How did you going to LSU affect your mama and your brothers? Was there any backlash?
Yeah, my mother and I fell out, but more so because she was being influenced by the same doctor that said that he was going to take care of me. Because he started off by saying, I don't want anything from you. He said, I just want to see that you and your family's taken care of.
So your mama wanted you to go to a Mississippi school?
No, my mother, being influenced by Dr. Dunn, wanted me to go to the highest bidder. Right? And because my mother, again, not because she had the equivalent of 8th grade education, but she didn't come to my game one of my games until the 9th grade. I didn't even want her to come. You know, I just wanted to stay at home. Mm-hmm. So she wasn't really in tune with that life, basketball and what was going on. And so I knew something was wrong when she asked me one day where you wanted to go. And I said, well, Mama, I want to go to LSU. She said, well, what about Georgetown? What about? I said, what do you know about these programs? And then she started to give me some resistance. And one night, it got back to Dr. Dunn that I wanted to go to LSU. And he came over. He took me for a ride on the interstate. And as we were talking, he said, hey, where you want to go? I said, I'm going to LSU. He said, no. I said, what do you mean, no? He said, and at the time, these are the words out of his mouth. He said, UNLV offered $100,000. UCLA offered $100,000. We're going for the highest bidder. Now, granted,
where the pronoun we came from?
Huh?
The pronoun we.
Exactly. Right. And so, but look, could I have used that money? Yes.
Absolutely.
And should athletes, now they're paying athletes, or athletes getting paid, should they have gotten paid then? Yes. But I was also, man, I don't want to use the word afraid. It's the best word in my head right now. I was so afraid of if I did that, I get caught, my eligibility is messed up, the image. Um, but also, I just didn't want to go to those schools, and then I didn't want to be strong armed either. I felt good about going to LSU because of the relationships that I developed, and it had little to do with basketball. It had more to do with the assistant coach. The conversations we probably talked about 1,000 hours on the phone. 90-some% of them
What's
had
his
nothing to do.
name?
Craig Cars. 90-some% of those conversations had nothing to do with basketball.
And then this is what said Louisiana State.
Yeah, this is prior to going to Louisiana State. And
No,
so
yeah, the conversations, but this was how he influenced you
right to
to
go
go to Louisiana State.
right, and it was just on a handshake. I said, man, look, all of these other things I'm putting on that list, don't worry about it. I said, my word is
Alhamdulillah.
my bond. This is what it's
Yeah,
gonna be.
Allah is the best knower because you going there now. We're gonna go to LSU,
Mm-hmm.
right? And you were. This is what I read. I want to certify this that you were given by your coach, Dan Brown.
Dale Brown.
Dale Brown. You were given the autobiography of Malcolm X,
Yes.
and he encouraged you to read, which is the 96 Surah. Um, you reading the autobiography of Malcolm X put you on the path to Islam. Is that correct?
Yeah, I would say a more direct path.
Now that's what I read. Now
Yes.
I got you here.
There
So
you go.
tell you explain what happened with the autobiography of Malcolm X to move you forward.
Well, if we're going from that point to the autobiography,
Is okay? Let me back because that's what I read. Now I got you here.
yeah,
I got you. I got to
yeah,
ask.
yeah.
What was the introduction to Islam?
Really, the introduction to Islam, as I got after I became Muslim, I started thinking back. It was way sooner than that. It was when I was in these apartments in Gulfport called the South Wind Apartment, and as a child, I would see. I didn't know what they were, but now I do. My older age, Allah was planting seeds early. There would be this Muslim sister with khimar on, hijab, and I would be playing. And when I would see, I would just find
In
myself
Gulfport,
in
Mississippi.
Biloxi,
In Biloxi, Mississippi.
same difference. And I would stop whatever I was doing, and my eyes just was transfixed, and I would just watch her go up, not because I'm thinking of beauty and anything else. I'm just like looking at her. Then I could recall the movie Roots, Kunta Kinte, the Salah, Salamu Alaikum. Then I remember when I was younger seeing these images of the Islamic Revolution in Iran in '79. These images, right? So Allah was planting seeds. Then Muhammad Ali, who didn't, love Muhammad Ali?
Mm-hmm.
And so Dale gives me this book because all up until that point, I grew up in the Baptist tradition and the sanctified church. I don't know if too many people know about that, but
Everybody black knows the sanctified church.
yeah, you go in, you might not come in to
Yeah,
later on
you be
at
there
night.
all day,
Right,
all night sometimes.
right. So I was having questions that I began to get the two most common answers. You can't, you just got to believe and you can't question God. Like, but what if I really want to know? I'm trying to find the answer. And so when he gave me the book, and again, I grew up in Mississippi, and so it's hard to find strong. Yeah, are there a lot of strong black men? Yes, but strong, outwardly speaking, confident, in your face, don't care who you are, to say what's on their mind in front of white folks type of black person.
You'll find that in Mississippi.
Right. So when I saw that in Malcolm, I'm a competitor. And there's something about, as human beings, we're just naturally attracted to pleasant things, right? And we're naturally repulsed by unpleasant things. So when I saw that, I'm seeing his strength, his courage, how articulate he is. And I'm like, I want that. I want some of that for myself because I didn't have it. I was that boy that was taught, you just got to play the game. Shut up. You got to get by. I don't want to get by. that ain't living in me. And even though you couldn't put your finger on it as a child, you knew something was wrong with that explanation and with the way people were living. But I couldn't put my finger on it. You know what I mean?
But you knew someone.
Yeah,
See,
I don't
see,
like the way this feels.
this is a great, great story because Islam is in us,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and
Natural.
and in our hearts,
Mm-hmm.
and it takes like just Dave,
A seed, a
you
spark.
tell the truth. Go ahead, you got the mic.
No, so when I'm reading his life, and I'm like, I couldn't put it down. I mean, it got to the point I didn't even sometimes want to go to practice because I'm trying to finish the story. And so his life just took me on another trajectory. Uh, I started learning, learning how to say no, learning how to tell people slowly what I felt, sit with the discomfort because it's uncomfortable, right? When people don't agree with you, they call you this, and you got to sit with that, man, how that feels, and then come back. And but him giving me that book put me on the road towards doing that. I'm indebted to him. I just talked to him the other day. I'm indebted to him forever for that. Yeah.
It's amazing because Islam has no uh, color, but obviously the majority of the world of Muslims are black, brown, and Asian, black and brown. But the coach that gave you the book was white,
Yeah.
and
North Dakota or South Dakota. Yep, North Dakota.
I don't understand that part of the story. Now I know Allah is
That's right.
you know governor over all, but when I read that, I was like, he knew something told him to give you that book. Did you ever ask him why?
Yeah, I did. But even with him, he grew up very poor. And he grew up seeing abuse and all of those things. And he was just one of those white guys, that decided to fight back, and he had relationships still to this day, like with the Farrakhan's, the Dick Gregory's. I mean, and he would give us stuff all the
He
time.
remind me a lot of kind of like a Phil Jackson kind of guy.
Uh,
Phil Jackson was in the sense that Phil had all these different relationships and he was reading books and giving books to his players and everything like that.
Same thing.
Because I said that was one of the questions I wanted. I said, this white guy from North Dakota giving you the autobiography of Malcolm X.
Yeah. And when he gave it to me, and I know we're not on that subject yet.
No,
about
we are.
the trend, all the transition in terms of how I was shifting and changing. But I asked him to answer your question. I asked him some years later because I never asked him. People would ask me, I said, I never asked him why. Right? It's funny. I said, Coach, I said, all of these years, people have been asking me. I keep forgetting to ask you. I said, why did you give me the autobiography of Malcolm? He said, I don't know. I say, what? And then I said, hold on. I said, because this is what I surmised from this. I said, listen, I think it was this. I said, and help me if I'm wrong. I was talking to him. Does this make sense? I said, you used to get on me a lot. Like I would be doing interviews. And if he didn't think that I was really speaking my conscience and my heart, hey man, he'll tell him how you feel, right? Basically quit soft pedaling through it. And I think he would always say, man, he's a hell of a basketball player, but he's a better person. But I think he saw a passiveness in me, right? That he didn't really want to see. And he said, you know what? That makes sense. That could be the reason why. But he told me, he said, I don't know. And I told him, I said, regardless, man, I'm indebted to you for that.
Alhamdulillah. I swear, man, that's a great story because it's by the grace of Allah.
Always.
Always. Because he gave you the book that set it off.
Yes.
All right, so you do 2 years at LSU, right? And you go you're number 3 in 1990 draft. Okay, where's Islam at this point in time? As you enter the draft, where you at in terms of Islam?
It's still in the periphery. It's still on my mind, but I haven't made the transition yet. When you've grown up doing something most of your life, right? It's scary. A part of it is scary, right? Because you still dealing with, okay, what if this ain't right? Because I at that point I never got picked up the Quran. I just read the autobiography,
Mm.
and there were things about it that okay, I because we mentioned this before, there's no sense of color in Islam. Right? Allah says He's created different nations and tribes and languages, not so that you'll despise one
So
another, so
you'll
that you'll
know
know one
one
another.
another.
And the best of you in the sight of Allah, He didn't say He that is black, white, rich, poor. No, He that is most righteous. So reading some of that about nation and philosophy, I'm like, I don't really, because I know some black people who just as diabolical to me than some white people,
Yeah.
and vice versa. So I couldn't really get with that at that time. But so when I was coming out of the New York, being the third pick in the NBA, I was still there. I was just processing until I went to Denver. And
There's a lot of change going on because you got a young brother from Mississippi who transitioned to Louisiana.
mhm, yeah,
And then he goes to New York for the draft. He's number 3
yeah,
in the nation.
yeah.
Then from New York, he shipped to Denver. That's a lot. And you're 20.
And I know we don't have all day, but even at LSU before the Denver, a lot of people didn't know. I mean, look, I'm breaking records in basketball by the grace and mercy of Allah.
Killing him.
I'm they're putting me on the cover of Sports Illustrated, Street and Smith. It's happening fast, right? But and even though I could read, I could spell well, my comprehension skills were terrible, right? Because I didn't grow up in a house where we
Yeah.
we were taught critical thinking and problem solving.
And you're dealing with Tourette's. When
And
was that diagnosis? And at that time, they probably gave you some medicine that took you places you didn't want to go.
ain't no problem. They did. I mean, the Tourette's is another. I don't want. It's another challenge because everything you do has to feel perfect. Like if I hit this, however it may look to you, if I do this and don't feel good, I gotta keep doing it until my mind and my body are on the same page. Dribbling the ball, shooting it, the way it goes in, the way my body, reading if it don't come off my mind right, I gotta read it again. If it don't come off my lips right, I gotta read it again. If I did all of that and it was perfect, if I didn't understand it, I gotta read it again. So to finish a page may take me 15 minutes, 20 minutes. So the frustration sometimes is putting the book down, like, man, I'm tired, right? And so that made it difficult. So when I went to LSU, I remember they put me in this room. And again, if I read something to someone at that age, I could spell words. But if you ask me what it meant, I memorized my way through school. I never really learned anything. I mastered the art in a sense of memorization. And they put me in this room, and it was one of the most humiliating moments of my life. And they had me to read something, and I'm reading it confident. And they said, well, I don't know why. But they said, what does this word mean? And I said, I don't know. They said, what does this word mean? I said, I don't know. And the more they asked, my eyes get water every time I think about it. The more they asked, the more humiliating I became. Like, man, I was embarrassed. And then they asked me again. I said, I don't know. They said, well, what do you get out of the story? I said, I don't know. So while I'm breaking records, right, I'm in front of people talking. They had me in the corner somewhere at LSU. It was about maybe 5 or 7 students. And they had me in the corner in the basement. They put me in a remedial reading class.
Mm.
Not because I couldn't read words and spell. It's because
Comprehension.
my comprehension skills and all of that critical thinking was very poor. In the world didn't even know that. So when I think about, right, so when he gives me Malcolm, you know what I mean? And I'm looking at this personality and how he's like, wow, how he's I said, man, it's like I was watching my guy at the time was Dr. J. That was my inspiration, even though our games aren't similar. So it's like Malcolm to me was the off the court, like how he
Yeah.
articulated and how he. I'm like, wow, I want some of that. I want that strength and his ability to describe and explain things the way and feel confident about it. I didn't have that, and I said, I want that. I want to have that type of freedom.
So did you see that freedom coming with Islam?
Did I see it coming with Islam when I was at LSU?
Yes.
I felt more confident that that's what it. Oh, after I got the autobiography, yes.
Okay, so now
Mm.
we and all of these transitions.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot for a 20-year-old young brother. You're in Denver.
Mm-hmm.
It's cold as hell. Snow, altitude, and again with Tourette's at that time, they probably was giving you some crazy medicine.
Haldol.
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 What's that? That sound like something you ain't supposed to take.
That's a whole nother ball game. That's a whole nother
What's
conversation.
Haldol?
it, I didn't find this out until we did the documentary not too long ago. Stan.
On
And
Showtime, ladies and gentlemen.
yes, and there was a guy that was on the team that had Tourette. And as we were talking, I had mentioned Haldol. He stopped. He said, "Hold on, what?" He said, "You on Haldol?" I said, "Yeah." I said, he said, "And you did all of that in high school and college on Haldol?" I said, "Yeah." What? He said, "Do you know what Haldol is?" I said, "It's a drug I was taking. It was like they give it to people in prison, right, to calm them down. Basically, it puts you to sleep, right? Makes you a zombie." I said, "That's the way I felt when I wasn't moving.
Mm.
Like if as long as I was moving in high school, I'm okay. Soon as I stopped, I stayed sleepy, eating and drinking. Like I'd be thirsty, eat, and I'm sleepy. Even in class, I couldn't stay up. So I'm on
So
Haldol all
throughout
of this
high
time.
school, throughout college, you were on Haldol.
Not all of college. Actually I stopped taking it uh, before I left high school because I'm like, man, they gave me these big horse pills too at one time. But I just said, you know what, man, I just want to do something else. And there was two white women, Miss Joe Evans and Miss Lil Jenkins, Coach Jenkins' wife. I mean, his head coach's wife. They came to LSU going into my second year, and they took me to this doctor in Houston named Dr. Jankovic, and he put me on Prozac and Prolixin. Now it didn't have the weight gaining effect
Yeah.
because in high school I was 155 the beginning of my senior year. We play 40 games a year in high school. I'm playing most of the minutes, and I'm playing even when we're not with the team. I ended up at before the year was up. I went from 155 to 170 or 180.
That's a lot of weight.
I'm at LSU.
Yeah, that's a lot
I'm
of
at
weight.
LSU 30 pounds overweight my first year.
Hmm.
185. There's no way I was supposed to be that big.
No.
Right.
No, let's go. We're in Denver now. Snow, you're no longer on Haldol, and the air, it's a whole different experience,
Mhm.
right?
Very much.
When did Islam kick in?
I was in contact with this. I grew up Baptist, but I was in contact with this Catholic guy, and then there was a guy named Mark James from New York that was living in Denver. We became close, and we would sit around and just have dialogue. One day, we were at the house, him and I. Islam came up in conversation, and I said, "You interested?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "I'm interested." He said, "Man, I met this Muslim brother named Abdullah, works in the airport. There's a masjid on Evans Street." He said, "We can go and pick up the Quran." I didn't hesitate because I read Malcolm, but I never picked up the Quran. And so we took off. I mean, I was speeding. I was so anxious. And I wanted to see what changed Malcolm. And I remember picking up the Quran, going back to the house, and he was across the table from me. And I opened it up and I read 2 to 3 pages. I can't remember the exact page, but to this day, I remember how it made me feel. And that feeling hasn't changed, it's escalated. But I looked across the table. I said, "I don't know about you. My search is over. I'm going to be a Muslim." Because whatever I read, all the questions that I had, I've never had that much certainty in my life. Like felt that certain about something. And I even read. I didn't. I just read 2, 3 pages, and that's when I decided to embrace Islam. After my first year in the league, that summer, I think it was in August,
This is your rookie year.
my rookie year.
Okay. Now, what's the path now?
Well, there's a whole bunch of different corridors and pathways, but
We got time, bro.
yeah, I accepted Islam. I think in October.
You took your shahada
My
in
shahada.
Denver at that same mosque.
Yep, at Abu Bakr Masjid.
Hmm.
No, not the same masjid. It was another masjid. Uh, and from there, things just began to just to expand in ways that I couldn't have even uh, invented this story myself. Really, I think that the fact that I was famous helped because when I would go to cities, mostly every city I went to, by and large, Muslims would meet me in the hotel lobby. Assalamu alaikum. Hey, assalamu alaikum. And I'm a people's person.
Hmm.
I love people
Hmm. Hmm.
and I love information,
Hmm.
right? And so if I felt good about them, and the majority of them I did, at the time Denver didn't have a plane, and so I would invite them to the room. I would order room service, and we would talk all
Wait a minute.
night.
Wait a minute. We got back up. The team didn't have a plane.
That's a whole nother story.
So you guys would ride regular
Commercial airline.
commercial airlines and you had to go get your bags and
Check in, go get your bags, and if they normally don't have enough first class seats, and so if you're not a veteran, you in coach, and they were smoking on the plane then, so you could be next to someone lighting it up, and you get off, and it it, it was one man. I was like, man, is this what I want to do? I mean, literally, it was tough. You talking about 82 game regular season?
there's a lot going on, brother, because you're coming into Islam, you're
Mhm.
20, you're in Denver, it's cold as hell, the altitude,
Mhm.
you know.
They changed the coach that brought me in. Doug
Oh
Moe.
yeah, Paul Westhead, right?
Doug Moe wanted me, but then they hired Paul
Paul
Westhead, and it
Westhead.
was obvious from the
Paul
dog
Westhead, he
call they
was
wanted me,
never really a good coach. He just wanted people to run up and down the court
basically. Yeah,
and then play no defense.
basically. Yeah, so there was a lot going on. Yeah.
And that was a lot for you as a young man.
Mm.
No, come on, brother. It
No,
was.
no,
It
it
was.
is.
And Islam is taking root.
Mhm.
So there's a level of excitement and exuberance
Mhm.
around becoming back to yourself,
Mhm.
you know. So you're meeting all these brothers, you're studying, you still making buckets though.
Yeah, but I'm so fascinated now with knowledge. Because when I was growing up, the athletes were my heroes.
Hmm.
Now, the more I read, thinkers became my heroes, right? Uh, and you're in these hotel rooms, and people have different academic disciplines. Some are great in history, some are great in psychology, sociology, right? And they're introducing you to books, right? And so I'm so thirsty because I feel I've been cheated, and I have educationally, right, in so many ways that also affected the way I saw myself, also affected the way I carried myself. Because there's a saying that your thinking influences your behavior forms your character, and your character determines your fate. And so they're introducing me to Noam Chomsky, Gore Vidal, Arundhati Roy, Amos N. Wilson, Kawanja Kunju. And one of the brothers in Denver named Bashir, he owned um, Salam's bookstore,
Mm.
Muslim bookstore, right on Colfax. And so after practice, I spent most of my time at his bookstore. I probably bought every book he had, and we would sit and I would get books and we just talk, drink tea or whatever, talk. And on the road, I'm just constantly getting information, right? And so that's building a new. It's like my whole genetic makeup, DNA is just shifting and changing. And it's like, you and being a competitor, right? Now you're trying to be a thinker, something you really didn't do most of your life, critical thinker, asking questions like, who do you want to be? Like, how do you want to be defined, and how do you want to be known? And is it for cloud? Is it because this is what your heart? I mean, you're really doing a lot of soul searching then, right?
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the people that you're admiring now are the people that stood up for something. And it's only logical. The more you consume, the company that you keep, whether it's through books, the information, or people,
Mm-hmm.
it eventually gonna rub off in some way, shape, or form.
Absolutely.
And that's what began to happen. Literally, I was going through. You from New York, so you remember the group X Clan.
Of course.
I'm
I,
going.
I,
Look,
I
I'm
knew
going.
them real well,
I'm going through these changes.
you know?
I'm wearing Shavar Kamises. I'm wearing Kufi's combat boots, and I'm coming in there jamming. African, very African, coming step right, because I'm going through changes. I'm trying to find out who I am, right? Because you've been given who you are, and I think that's one of the most dangerous things when you deprive people of a knowledge of self and a knowledge of their history, because you become susceptible to someone else's interpretation of who you are, and
Yeah.
they don't always have your best interest.
They don't have their
And
best
so
interest. If they're
now you're
depriving
like,
your
okay,
knowledge.
all of these years
Mhm.
of getting this and not knowing who you are, now I got to go through this process of reading and relearning and all of this. And so I was going through those changes.
And at the same time, you had to play ball.
Exactly.
And it appears to me that playing ball is imposing on your personal development.
At times, for sure. I There was an incident that took place. We had to go to training camp in
Mhm.
Colorado Springs, and it's like 2 days before training camp, and tears are coming down my face, because I'm like, I don't even want to go. I just want to be immersed in this information, but not just for information's sake. There's a verse in Quran when Allah says, "Don't be like a donkey with books on your back." You got all of this information. What you gonna do with it?
Mhm.
So it's about sharing it. It's about, okay, let's apply it. And so, yeah, at times it was definitely imposing upon it, and it was difficult to navigate, right? But that's where all of those motivate. You have to have different motivators to push you, right? To pull
When
from.
did you feel the NBA was looking at you and watching your movements? I'll say that loosely
Mhm.
because the NBA was. It seemed like there was a point when they identified you as a problem. Now,
That's a good question.
in their minds,
Mhm.
you know, but see, at the time, Islam wasn't. Islam is becoming more accepted in some cases now.
No.
And you paved the way for that. You know what I'm saying? But there's like in America now, Saudi Arabia is a great country and Gaza is terrible. And so they got to get past that, just that right now. But I even remember, like, just from my personal standpoint and being Muslim and watching my brother, I remember when Hakeem Olajuwon said something, that's not Islam, and I was like, wow, you don't even have to say nothing. You know what I'm saying? It was a it seemed like the NBA was trying to pit themselves against you. When did you feel that?
Well, since you're saying the NBA and not necessarily the team I was on, when I felt
No, you start where you want. If you want to start with the Nuggets, because I know the Nuggets at some point, because there was a point where you had a really good team, and then they shipped you out because you had the Kimbe, you had the Ellis brothers,
We had
LaFonso
Jalen
and
Rose, Dale
Jalen Rose.
Ellis, LaFonso Ellis, Brian Stith, Robert Pack. We had
You were
and we had a
killing
lot
them,
of players
and
that come
and
through.
that was the year that of the series where you were down what 2 games, 3 games.
I think I can't remember exactly, but maybe 3 games.
It was 3 games, and you came back and
The last seed beating the first seed,
it was
Seattle.
crazy. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I remember Dikembe on the floor crying.
Yeah.
You know, because I knew Dikembe from Georgia. That was the time I was at Howard. You know, and our team was. Listen, I'll tell the truth. Howard's team was bad,
Yeah.
so we used to go to Georgetown to watch the games. You know what I'm saying? So I remember him being on the floor crying, and I remember you being on the sideline holding your head like, "Oh, I can't believe we just did this," because you beat the eighth seed beat the number 1 seed.
Yeah.
So you had a great team.
Well, actually, I wasn't holding my head in excitement, and I'm not proud of this moment at all. And I've only mentioned this maybe a few times, but again, I was going through some stuff. Right, I'm still transitioning.
Yeah, you're going
I'm
through a
learning.
lot. What are you,
I
21,
I
22?
yeah, I had just went to Hajj,
Is that
right?
right?
The previous year, I think, and we were planning on going back, and I was planning on taking a few brothers with me. They ended up going, but if you give me a choice, and in one way you think about the verse in Quran, Allah says, "Which of the favors of your Lord will you deny?" He's put you in a position, maximize it, perfect it. Allah's in control of everything. But at that age, I'm thinking, man, I'm gonna go to Hajj because I didn't feel like that first one was as strong. Because the more knowledge you get, you go in with a different mindset, right? Because you now have more knowledge. You could feel it more, right? You could process it more. And that when I went at first, it was because I heard the imam say, "You got the means, you got to go." But I was, and so in my mind, I'm like, literally, I'm not throwing the game. I'm still playing, but I'm not playing. Because I'm like, man. And it's like, when I'm not playing, we keep winning. What is going on here, right? I'm trying to go to Hajj. And so the little backdrop on that, I was like, wow. But then afterwards, I felt bad about it because I'm like, Allah, you put me, you're in control.
Allah blessed you because you got see now looking back, brother, you had young brothers like me and all the people at Howard, wherever I was, man. You was a man. You know what I'm saying? And I don't know when I found out you were Muslim. I don't know when along the way, but so many Muslims looked up to you. You know what I'm saying? And there's so many people I know became Muslim because of you. That was a major platform because it's like people now don't know like when the game came on. There was no you didn't have a lot of choices.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
It ain't like you had 100 channels. Your city might had 12. And when the game came on, everybody was tuned into the game. So alhamdulillah, you gave us so much. You know? And Allah placed you in that position for a reason. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree. I believe that.
All right, so you had by that time you already gone to Hajj, so you're really on your deen, you're on your way. Did your name change by then?
After I came back from Hajj, I think I changed my name going into my 4th year because I think I went the 3rd year. Going into my 4th year, I think is when I changed my name to Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf.
And what does that mean?
Mahmoud, elegant, praiseworthy, Abdul-Rauf, the servant of the Most High.
When did you say? When did you choose it? Like this? What made you choose this?
After I became a Muslim, I went into the office of the imam, and there was another brother there, and they asked me had I chosen a name. I said no. And one of them said, "Look, I think Mahmoud would be a good name for you." I said, "I heard all of the names are beautiful, mashallah." Another brother said Abdul-Rauf. And I'm not good with names when I meet people. It takes time. But maybe almost 2 weeks or so later, I'm in the masjid, and I see the people that were in the office, and the guy that suggested that Mahmoud was a good name, and the guy that suggested Abdul-Rauf was a good name. That was their names they wanted me to have. And then I'm like, wow. And then I get a book afterwards with names in there. And I'm looking at names that I would have probably chose. Like I love the name, the sound of Suleiman, but I also love Mujahid, the striver for truth. I
Mm.
said I would have probably been Mujahid. I'd probably call myself that. So when I go do speaking engagements, sometimes I'll tell people, if you call me Mujahid, I
I'll
don't have no
answer.
problem with it. Yeah.
So we got to go back to when did you realize the NBA had it out for you, and when did those two questions? Because we got
Yeah.
sidetracked. When did we realize Denver had it out for you, and when did you realize the NBA had it out for you?
Well, Denver started to question me when we started losing, like when we were winning, because before the game would start, the locker room at the time there was a equipment room attached to it, and so if this is the coach, the equipment room was right in back of the other lockers of the players. There's a little door, so I would go in the door, and the equipment room is very tight place, and I'd pray because we already go over the plays anyway. It's not like we don't know the game plan,
Mm-hmm.
and then I come back out, see what I missed, catch up, and then we go out and play.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Nothing is said. We start losing a little bit. Then you start seeing coaches come to me, say, hey, and I remember one in particular, good guy. He's caught in the middle, Mike Evans. Uh, he said, hey, and even Bernie Bickerstaff had said something about we have guys coming into the meetings a little late, boom, boom, boom. I knew he was referring to.
Mm-hmm.
And then Mike Evans came to me one day, and Mike Evans was like, Mahmoud, I talked to a Muslim, and he said that you you can delay, you don't have to pray and boom, boom, boom. I said, Mike, if you have anything you want to ask me, you don't have to sneak behind my back. You can come to me. I'll tell you like a man. I said, there's a verse in Quran where Allah says, and I paraphrase it for him. I said that if it's moments of danger, you can pray standing on your side, boom, boom, boom. And I looked around, being, sarcastic. And I said, as far as I know, I don't feel danger around here. So when it's time to pray, I'm gonna pray. I said, but if you want to know something, come talk to me. So that's when I started to realize, right? Y'all are nitpicking, y'all watching. Then I would see them on the plane because I brought books with me. And if there was a book that I read that I enjoyed, I would buy extra copies because I meet people. And if I get into a conversation and I feel that you're receptive to it, say, man, here's a book. I would do that to teammates. I would do that to people people I meet. And so, but we would have conversations on the bus about, I don't care if it's the Iran, you name it. We have comparative religious debates. And I would notice when we would get into these conversations and I would look up at the front of the plane, the coaches and stuff would be shaking their head like, oh, here we go, right? And so that's when I knew Denver had it out. When I knew the NBA was when the assistant general manager came to me and he said that someone's noticed that you haven't been standing for the flag, right? Not necessarily the
Assistant general manager of
Denver, Todd Ely. And so this is now the NBA. And he said, would you like to get your message? I said, we talk about this stuff all the time. So if someone will ask me questions, let's go. Right after that happened, it aired. And on the radio, we're playing Shaq. He was with Orlando. They interviewed me on TV, asking me about it. Once I said what I said is when the NBA heavily got involved in. And I remember coming to the game that night, and Bernie called me to the office, and he said, the NBA called. I said, okay. He said, they need a decision. They said, you got to stand, and if you don't, they're going to suspend you. I said, well, I'm not standing. He said, well, they want to talk to you. I said, get them on the phone. And when they were on the phone, and to this day, I wouldn't be surprised if one of those people on that phone was what's his name? The
David Stern,
No, David Stern was the commissioner then. Now Adam Silver.
Adam
I
Silver.
wouldn't be surprised because the
That
reason
was his main man.
yes, that's why I said it. But also they identified themselves as Jewish because they ended up giving me an example, trying to convince me to stand. I listened respectfully, and afterwards, when they finished, I said thank you for sharing that with me. And I said, but the example that you gave me don't apply to me, right? And I said, I'm not standing. I've never been suspended, fined, or anything, right? So for me, I'm thinking that there's active legislation going to take place, going to take some time. And so I said, well, look, can I go get dressed? Bernie said, no. I said, oh, it starts right now?
Wow.
And then I said, well, can I put some clothes on and go out and support the team? He said, no, they don't even want you on the premises. And so that's when I drove home. And before you know it, it's global. It's all over the news. I'm like, wow.
That's cool.
Yeah, yes. But
2 days, so 30, almost $32,000 per game. 2 games suspension.
it was a game suspension. And then that was another hurdle because now people are like, oh, the money. I had nothing to do with money. Why I came back. I was talking to a mentor of mine, Muhammad Alasi, the book that I'm reading,
Mm-hmm.
and he gave me an example. And look, as human beings, but I'm a Muslim, but as human beings, we make a decision. If we see something better, we do that. Now, it was hard because I understood that, man, if I come back, people are going to think I compromise. That's the last thing I'm doing. And so he ended up telling me a story about the prophet, that there was a Jewish funeral procession passing by. He said, look, if you don't stand, you're on your ground. If you come back and you don't stand for their cause, you know, it's noble. And that's when he gave me the example. And he said, when his Jewish funeral procession was passing by, a prophet stood. They said, why did you stand, O prophet? He said, I didn't stand for their cause. He said, I stood because God gave a life and took a life away. He said, so you can come back and stand, but it not be for what America represents, right? For their cause, you can pray for the oppressed. You can use this as a platform. And he made sense to me.
But the NBA still had it out for you.
Oh,
And
no
Denver
question.
still had it out for you.
No question.
Because at the end of the season, you were traded.
At the end of that season, yes, they
And
traded me to Sacramento.
Sacramento, you know.
Yeah.
What did you learn from that whole experience?
That history repeats itself time and time again. You look at the Paul Robesons, you look at the Muhammad Alis, you look at people that took positions, right, that were unpopular. No matter how, what's the word I'm looking for? Hopeful you may be, that people are going to look at things differently and see the wisdom behind it, and that, like, literally, most people in this country are suffering. They've done studies that even middle income is like 1, 2 paychecks away from being on the street. It's a huge facade that people are doing extremely well. A lot of people don't have, the majority of them don't have $800 for emergency, right? I don't know how many times I talk to whether you white, black, Christian, Jew, agnostic, atheist. I travel and I speak to people. I get into stuff with people because I want to learn. That's how I'm going to learn. Mostly every person I talk to, rich, not rich. A lot of them sound like me. Like when you talk about the system, like, man, something is wrong. And I say, you know what? One of the most phenomenal feats ever to be accomplished. This is what I believe. It's not going to the moon. It's not creation of nuclear energy. Whatever statistically they say are the top most phenomenal things in this world, I think the top is a small group of people being able to convince the masses to accept their oppression, knowing that they're being oppressed. Right? That's phenomenal to me.
It really is. And in this country, the black man and woman is the scapegoat.
Mm-hmm.
You know, for everything.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like I'm sure many of those government workers thought, "What, they gonna fire black people? They gonna fire me?"
Mm-hmm.
And it's sad because when you leave America, you actually see
Mm-hmm.
the problems.
Hmm.
You know, let's talk about your first trip to Hajj. How was that?
Uh, I was anxious. It was a major learning experience for me. I ended up taking a couple of older brothers with me who had been before. One of them was the owner of the bookstore, Salam, and a brother named Muhammad Sharif. And I think that was probably the first overseas trip that I ever took.
Is that right?
And the Quran was the first book I ever finished. And just going there, knowing that this is the place of the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu and a hero of mine, Malcolm, and so many other people have been, and that I'm finally in a position to be there and to learn and to go through the struggle was was a major change. It changed me, and I mean, it just escalated the change, right? Yeah.
How do you like playing for the big three?
Well, I haven't played in 3 years, the last 3 years, but I was fortunate to play 5 years with them straight. It was it was nice because it enabled me to be able to play one because it's been so long and I still kind of stayed in shape. And so a part of it was uh, able to just go out there and play against a lot of guys you never played against because they were younger. Now I'm the old, I was the oldest one.
Mm-hmm.
Charles Oakley was, but he don't count because he only played a half of a game. He coached, but in terms of playing, so most of those guys I never played against. And then you're out there, and then you finally get chance to play, and then you're doing well, and
You was doing well. You still draining them threes.
yeah. And so now what happens, and it's only by the grace and mercy of Allah. I couldn't write it, right? And it's now the conversation comes up again. Like y'all did him wrong. Like he's doing this at 50 and moving like that, and these guys are younger. Look at all those, right? So it starts the conversation again, and it's less to do with me because so many people are you know this. So many people are railroaded that don't get the attention for whatever reason. You know, out of the league, and it's just you get tired of it. You get tired of seeing people because when you're going through being abused and oppressed and you know invisible to so many people when you're black, you go through living that way. You go through know what it feels like to be hungry and all of these things. When you see other people going through stuff, man, it angers you. You know, it really does.
It really does.
You know, and I'm
If
not.
you have a conscience.
Yeah, exactly. So I gotta control myself. Every day I'm angry. I don't want to not to be, but we know there's a balance, right? You got to find moments of humor. You got to find those other moments too, because life is a balance.
James Baldwin said to be conscious in America and black is to be angry.
Constantly in a rage,
Constantly in a rage.
right? I love that quote. It's so true. Yeah.
Do you see any parallels between yourself and Colin Kaepernick, that whole situation?
Yes, I did. When it happened, I actually reached out to Colin Kaepernick, just trying to motivate him. You know, stay strong, stay the course. But another example of an athlete speaking his conscience about the system, and not that he had, not that what he said was wrong. What he said was correct, but he's in a position, and athletes have a lot of influence, and so what happened to him, they did they did the same with me, and I felt that his time was going to decrease. He wasn't going to play because there are laws in this country, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so you just can't come out. So we getting rid of you because you. So you have to play it right. And so literally when they decreased his minutes, and you had all of these people coming out and saying what they're saying about him, trying to castigate or you know what you call it, destroy his character. Uh, it was parallel by far. It's the same thing happened to me. My minutes decreased. They even did a special. I was the top free throw shooter in the league. They didn't show me. I said, "Oh, the writing's on the wall." Right? I mean, literally, journalists the whole year, probably not even five of them really wanted to come and interview me. I said, "The writing's on the wall." But the difference is that during Kaepernick's time and our time, and it didn't hit me until Dr. Harry Edwards broke this down to me. He said they had social media, we didn't.
Right.
And so I had a lot of death threats, and I had a lot of people writing me, a lot of support mail, way more support mail than negative mail.
And hate mail.
And I'm talking about from people from all different avenues, different religions, different ethnic persuasions, right? Political persuasions, saying, no, we agree with you. This country, da 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 da. The media gets those things too, but they had more of control of what they wanted to show.
Mm.
Now with social media, people could come out and they can share videos, they can share their views. And so he said, Mahmoud, he said, when Muhammad Ali did what he did, he said, when you and Craig Hodges did what you did, it was worse. I said, what do you mean? He said, when Muhammad Ali did what he did, there was a Black Power movement to frame it
Right.
under.
To frame him. Exactly.
He said, when Kaepernick did what he did, there was a Black Lives Matter movement to frame it under. He said, when you and Craig, and this is his words, my thing is if anybody stands, man, we applaud them, we support them, keep it rolling. I said, wow, this is why you Dr. Harry Edwards and you do what you do. But he said, it's like you and Craig were in an ocean without a paddle.
Right, so.
Right. And I said, wow, I never looked at it that way.
It's crazy. Would you do anything differently?
Hindsight, right? Boy, if we had to look. If I would be more knowledgeable so I can articulate it even that much better. And I would have one thing I love that Kaepernick did that I didn't do. Teams matter. The people you're around. He had a team at the time. Know Your Rights campaign.
Mm.
Pow. Right? Somalia. Pow. He had things going. I'm sure he did a lot of things under the radar too. You don't want to expose everything. And I would be more conscientious of the type of team that I had and to keep that ball rolling and moving in that type of way, right? To use that momentum, that impact. I thought that was wonderful.
Brother, what advice do you have to those coming behind you, particularly in sports?
I'm not really, there's so much to say. You already know that. And you're afraid sometimes that you may miss something. But I would say first and foremost, man, I mean, work on your relationship with the Creator, right? For me, your relationship with the Creator should govern everything you do. And I would say also learn as much as you can about the world around you. Take serious your associations with people. You know, they do studies. If you're trying to gain weight and you're having problems with weight issues, hang around people in shape. If you're not smart, hang around smart people. If you want to be, because they say that there's a consistency, there's a pattern of living, a pattern of conversations that got them to that point. And eventually, whatever you're trying to accomplish, be around these type of people because it's going to eventually rub off. And continue to never lose sight of being curious, right, about life and learning. And it's a saying also by George Washington Carver, and I'll end. He says, no one has the right to come into this world and go out of it without leaving behind distinct and legitimate reasons for having passed through it. Right? So find out what it is, leave that type of impact. Like that, people be like, he utilized his life to benefit more than himself.
That's right.
He left an impact.
Brother, what's next for you?
We got a lot of things we're trying to do. I mean, we do a lot of traveling. You just had Hanif on, so we do a lot of traveling, speaking. But people have been asking me to get into establishing more camps. And it's bigger than basketball. My thing is use basketball.
It's manhood training. It's manhood
yeah.
training.
And I love it when I do it. But I got to work on this memoir. And then I got to work on this children's book because I grew up with Tourette's. And right now, mental illness is just skyrocketing, especially among the youth. And so I want to write a children's book or something dealing with using Tourette's syndrome to kind of deal with those issues. There's a lot. There's a lot that
Those are two great ones.
No, thank you.
Brother, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you.
And I'm telling you, you've been one of my heroes for the longest time. And to sit here and talk to you is a dream come true.
Pleasure's mine.
Because I watch you drain that shoot. You shoot that ball, brother.
I appreciate it.
I watch you in the big three. You shoot that ball,
I
man.
appreciate it.
I said that was my man. But to sit here and talk to you, alhamdulillah, Allah's the best on. And we got to do some things together. Anything that I can do with you, for you, I'm here.
Oh, thank you.
Just call
Likewise,
me, brother.
Likewise. We'll use each other.
Yeah, absolutely. Alhamdulillah. Listen, this week's edition of Oasis, my man, Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf, I'm telling you, this has been a joy, an honor, a privilege of mine. I've watched this, brother, and I'm happy. And please, I hope everyone learned a lot from it, because I did. Alhamdulillah. Thank you again, brother. Until we get again, Oasis family, it's your brother Haq Islam. Assalamu alaikum.